Welcome to Warbot. Today we're looking at Operation Deterrent Balance 1, which is essentially a drone strike by the Houthis against the Saudi oil facilities in southeast Saudi Arabia, the Shaybah supergiant oil field. It's interesting because there's really not much to it game-wise. I've used these characters, although these are not the sort of drones they're using, and more missile drones. I also added some air defense, just because I didn't want to leave this sort of empty really, because I was always a bit unsure as to how it looks. You might just think, well, we're all Saudi units, well that's all they have. And it's in the airport, so it only actually covers this well here, giving you some choices. So there we have the oil field with some targets, and here are our drones. To carry out the this type of attack, you click that, and all the units vanish. Because there's only one, you can only see that. So we could probably don't have to do that. Next, let's attack the actual refinery, because these are wells, refinery. It's out of reach of the air defense there. A bunch of gibberish. Actually, I shouldn't say that at that stage. I'll leave it for the time being. So we got 2 damage, which is actually quite lucky. So as you can see, it's now down to 18. So we can choose this again, or we can go for something else. Let's just do this again. 1 damage. I always do them separately. It's a glitch in the game really, and I'm so used to it. No damage. 1 damage. Obviously you don't need me to spell it out every time, but 2, so that was a good strike. 1, and just for a little variance, let's try this well. Or do we? Yeah, let's just do this well. Sod's law really. 0 damage on all of those strikes. So that's it, that's the game over. I think it's interesting for a number of reasons. But one of the interesting things about it is that it reflects this sort of growing move towards unmanned fighting vehicles of one form or another. When you've got loitering munitions, which are basically missiles that just fly around in circles waiting to spot a target. You've got missiles, but those are sort of slightly different. You've got intelligent missiles, which can target exactly where they're going to hit, in theory. You've got these drones, and this was an attack which was supposed to be sort of, I don't want to say unprecedented, but I mean large scale, using 10 of these drones. And I think you've got to sort of wonder how much they cost and what sort of damage they can do, and what we can actually do with something like that. Because you could set up 100 drones to take out a particular target, and obviously the Saudis are probably looking to protect their assets, but they've got so much that could be targeted. Makes you wonder what the potentials are for sort of that type of technology, and it's probably coming from Iran. Well, I think it suggests in the article something a little more substantial than that. I thought they might have said they're UAE drones, but I don't know. But the thing is, you're getting nearer and nearer the mark of this sort of high technology becoming available to low-tech nations, in the sense that they can develop their own technology based on that. I mean, just a complete aside, the South Front had an article on some space debris that was blown up and postulated that Russia or China were experimenting with space weapons. And I was thinking, well, I could have one of these maps and just have a sort of all black, a bit of space, and you can go around blowing things up in space. I mean, that's where it's going, but these nations will never be able to get into space. But I think when it comes down to space, it's sort of, it's a first strike thing, and I think both, a lot of people are considering, what can we do without our satellites? When the satellites go down, it's going to be pretty tough. And a lot of the anti-satellite technology is not actually in orbit. It's just missile capability that can be launched at any time. So I think you're going to say goodbye to a lot of satellites if it ever comes to it. But this sort of technology, you're going to find that, if you've got enough money and capability, you could probably wage war remotely, and you've got to think, well, how effective are they? Well, I don't think they're going to be that effective in any grand sense when you consider that the amount of effort that Russia, for example, and Syria and other nations obviously have been putting into aerial bombardments and even artillery bombardments. Under a bombardment, the enemy tends to go to ground in tunnel networks. And so I don't think you could really sort of say, okay, well, these magic drones, we can suddenly start, waging wars remotely, because it would just be the same thing. It would just, you'd have to have thousands of drones. This is 10 drones, and when they do these airstrikes, Russia's dropping, tons of bombs in hundreds of sorties alone, and these are not tons of bombs, these are just missile heads. So you can't really do the same sort of thing that you can with artillery and heavy bombers. So I don't think it's really going to replace that, but it does give you the sort of capability to hit strategic targets that might or might not be well defended and can only be countered by more costly technology. For example, I don't know how much these drones cost, but I imagine what they're trying to do is to make them as cheap as possible. And what that would mean is, I have absolutely no idea how much they cost, but let's suppose then they cost $10,000 to make, or even $5,000. I have no idea what's in them. They're probably, once you get the optics and the control systems, automated in a production sense, you could probably knock them out like you can microwave ovens. So you could probably make tons of those. It's standard fuselage systems based on, just aluminium parts and the sort of dodgy wheels that they have, and some kind of prop system. How much is all that going to cost? And how much does that cost, versus SAM systems, anti-missile defense systems, anti-drone systems, You know, I mean, they're probably not going to be too easy to shoot out of the sky. I mean, they're much smaller targets to start off with. You're not going to be able to spot them as well. What I'm getting to really is that, you know, there could be a cost-benefit comparison between how much it costs to produce these, the amount of damage that you can do, versus how much it costs to produce a surface-to-air missile that will counter it. I mean, these surface-to-air missiles are actually a lot more expensive, a lot more complex, because the task they've got to do is a lot more onerous. And you're going to have sort of complex radar systems tracking it, capable staff, etc., etc. So I think this is interesting in the sense that, you know, it's giving the, you know, armed forces the ability to sort of carry out strikes in ways that couldn't be done before. But I don't think it's revolutionary in any extent, because, you know, they're already using missiles, and missiles are fairly sort of dumb, but, you know, they can smarten them up a little bit. So, you know, why not just fire loads of missiles? I mean, you know, Adolf Hitler, well, not personally, but he was doing it with his V1s and his V2s. I don't think he fired any V2s, but he was just sending these rockets over. And, you know, so the technology is not exactly new from a rocket perspective, but but clearly these drones are new. So I don't know. I think what it means is that the Houthis, or any force, can target more remote locations, you know, picking more sensitive targets. You know, for example, power facilities will probably be sensitive, you know, especially nuclear power, whether they would even go for something like that. Even things like, you know, broadcasting studios, strategic targets, you know, like landmarks, parliament, you know, government buildings, things of that nature, where, you know, just even being attacked would have its own significance, and being able to, you know, to carry out those attacks, you know, from miles and miles away, etc., etc., etc. So I don't think that it's actually, you know, something that is so game changing. I just think it's just going to give them another angle on doing these sorts of things. I think that, you know, the whole thing is the indirect fire capability, and I think I'm not sure who it is, the people from Lebanon, Hamas. I mean, they've been firing rockets into Israel for decades, and their rocket technology gets better. Honestly, they know how to build rockets, and they can, you know, it's not particularly complex. And I don't really know what a lot of difference this is, other than this is probably a little more accurate. But is it? I mean, for the amount of money it's costing, why don't they just get, you know, the equivalent financially in rockets and just launch rocket attacks? So there could be a lot of just sort of, not so much propaganda, but, you know, the fact that they can do something like this is, you know, probably causing the Saudi Arabians a PR problem, or a little more of a problem from the extent that they're being attacked in their own nation with a more advanced sort of technology. But the practicalities of it are probably, you know, not that great. I mean, you know, these Houthis are fairly sort of dexterous, so to speak. I mean, they could probably just as well carry out, you might call it insurgent attacks or terrorist attacks, you know, deep in Saudi Arabia anyway. I mean, they could probably get, you know, their agents posing as camel herdsmen to go, you know, anywhere they want in Saudi Arabia, dress up as a tourist or something, drive around, jump out with an AK-47, kill a bunch of people, you know. So I mean, it's sort of, maybe you've got to question what you're actually looking at and reading as a sort of this new neftangled sort of method of waging war. I mean, how much damage did these rockets carry out? I mean, they released some footage of one of the airports. I don't know, Riyadh, something like that, airport that was attacked by some rockets about 3 or 4 years ago, and they just released the videos fairly recently. And the damage didn't look that great. It was sort of, they got a baggage line or something, and well, obviously they have to rebuild it. But they've been doing that for years. I mean, there's that famous German terrorist group that carried out some RPG attacks from a viewing station at an airport in Munich, I think, or in Germany somewhere. And they missed, but the rocket hit another aircraft. I mean, it's such small-scale attacks that it's more sort of the fact that people will panic about flying as opposed to, the actual military strategic benefits to it all. Obviously, an airplane full of holes, and I saw the pictures, isn't actually, ideal because it's going to cost an absolute fortune to fix, but, not that much. I've seen some of these pictures of some of the aircraft after the Libya strikes, when the rebels, took over one of the airfields, and the aircraft have sort of got some holes in them from where they've been shot. And you sort of think, well, gosh, that's really, that's they've got to, obviously they can't fly. I mean, what are they actually going to do? I mean, they're going to take them into the hangars and they're going to, take a panel out, replace a panel. They could even just stitch a panel over, repair the insides, and it'll fly again. I mean, I'm not sure how safe it would be. They have to go through these sort of these air checks, but I mean, you've got to wonder, how stringent those are in these sort of African, Middle Eastern countries. I think to fly into Western aerospace, you've got to meet certain standards. So having holes, machine gun bullet holes in fuselage probably doesn't qualify, but presumably they are repairable. So anyway, it'd be interesting to sort of know, how much damage they did. I mean, I know they attacked a pipeline, and a pipeline across Iraq was attacked. So you've got all these strategic targets. And you sort of think, well, what can be done? How much damage can actually be done, targeting those things? I mean, the pipelines are probably quite vulnerable, etc. So anyway, well, this is that. I mean, obviously we did all our attacks. Well, we didn't do them all, did we? We did some of them on the refinery and some of them on the wells. Didn't do any damage to the wells. And just to sort of maybe test that, I'm going to play a game. Operation Deterrent Balance 1. It gives the impression that there's going to be more. So first of all, we're going to switch on the bombardment thing. Hopefully we'll do some damage. 1, yeah, it was just luck. 1. I wonder what happens if we do more. 3. 3. Okay, so that's that. Hope you enjoyed that. Gives you food for thought on the future of mid-range military operations, etc., etc. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.